Hey, Huma 30, welcome back. This is Professor R. Alexander, and just want to remind you all that we have an amazing counseling center at Deanza on the second floor of the Student and Registration Building. Come and see us. We also have our mental health program, our mental health and wellness team, where you get up to 5 sessions. So come through. Um, Amazing financial aid department, the Promise program, outreach, student success and retention services, tutorial services, and the writing center. So we have a lot of resources to help you be successful at De Anza College. So make sure you make your way around so you could discover some of these resources, because you never know how impactful they will be for your success. So as I am talking, you're taking notes. This is lecture number 2. And some of these words I have a really hard time pronouncing, but I'm going to stumble around and try my very best. So check it out. This is chapter 2 that deals with stress, the psychophysiology aspects of stress. Right. So our chapter outline is we're going to cover the brain, the endocrine system, the autonomic nervous system, the cardiovascular system, and the gastrointestinal system, as well as we'll look at the muscles that contract when you're undergoing stress, and also changes in the skin. So when we talk about the brain, this translates to the psychological and sociological stressors perceived by the mind. Whenever you're going through a stressful act, the brain instructs the rest of the body on how to adjust to those stressors. Right? Whenever we come across a chart or a graphic, I like for you to pause that video. So let's look at figure 2.1. These are different parts of the brain. This is a really fun chapter for my folks that are going into the medical field, my chemistry majors, my biomedical majors, nursing majors in the class. Nerd out a little bit and take a deeper dive in learning these different structures of the brain. Now, as we look at the cerebral cortex, the upper part of the brain is responsible for the thinking function, right? There's all these different parts of the brain and they all have different functions. So the subcortex is the lower part of the brain responsible for various physiological processes necessary to stay alive. So that cerebral cortex and the subcortex, they work hand in hand. All right. The cerebral cortex, also referred to as the gray matter. This consists of the frontal lobe associated with reasoning, planning, the parts of speech, movement, emotions, and problem solving. The parietal lobe is associated with movement, orientation, recognition, and perception of stimuli. The occipital lobe is associated with vision. The temporal lobe is associated with perception and the recognition of sounds, memory, and speech. The cerebral subcortex is comprised of the cerebellum, and this coordinates body movement. The medulla oblongata regulates heartbeat, breathing, and other similar physiological processes. The pons regulates sleep. The diencephalon regulates emotions and includes the thalamus and the hypothalamus. And the thalamus relays sensory impulses from other parts of the nervous system to the cerebral cortex. The hypothalamus activates the autonomic nervous system. And the reticular activating system, we use the acronym RAS, is a network of nerves that connects the mind and the body. It provides the neural connections that are needed for the processing and learning of information and the ability to pay attention to the correct task. Excessive arousal of the cortex results in stressful responses. An under-aroused cortex results in difficulty in learning, poor memory, and little self-control. Stress and its pathways. The hypothalamus activates two stress reactivity pathways. The autonomic nervous system controls such body processes as hormone balance, temperature, and the width of blood flow. The endocrine system is comprised of hormones that regulate physiological functions. Take some time, pause the video for figure 2.2, stress and its pathways. Stress in the brain. The hippocampus is part of the brain that signals the presence of stress. Adrenal glands release glucocorticoids during stress, and the glucocorticoids regulate metabolism of glucose and are detected by the hippocampal cells. Stress causes damage to the hippocampal cells. That's why it's so important to regulate stress and keep stress at a minimum. Now, the endocrine system, this includes all the glands that secrete hormones. Hormones travel through the circulatory system to various targets. It alters the function of other bodily tissues. The four pathways are the adrenal cortex, adrenal medulla, the thyroid gland, and the pituitary gland. This is another good opportunity to pause the video so we can look at the graphic for figure 2.3, locations of major endocrine glands. Adrenal cortex is influenced by the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. Adrenal cortex secretes glucocorticoids and mineral corticoids. The primary is cortisol, right? Cortisol provides energy for action, okay? The primary mineralocorticoid is aldosterone. And aldosterone increases blood pressure to prepare for action. The blood pressure is measured in systolic and diastolic ways. The adrenal medulla is activated through a direct nerve connection from the posterior portion of the hypothalamus. And this secretes adrenaline and noradrenaline. The effects remain 10 times longer than the adrenal corticoids. Told you we're going to get real science heavy. Changes caused by the catecholamines, acceleration of heart rate, increase in force at which blood is pumped out of the heart, dilation of the coronary arteries, dilation of bronchial tubes, an increase in basal metabolic rate, the constriction of blood vessels in the muscles and the skin of the arms and legs, increase in oxygen consumption. The thyroid gland. This secretes thyroxin due to the influence of the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. It increases the basal metabolic rate, free fatty acids, gluconeogenesis, gastrointestinal motility, rate and depth of respiration, heart rate, blood pressure, anxiety, decreases feelings of tiredness. Now, any of these terms, you can pause the video and look them up, especially if you want to take a deeper dive into the thyroid gland or the hypothalamus. Vasopressin, antidiuretic hormone, or ADH and oxytocin. ADH and oxytocin are produced by the pituitary gland. ADH acts on the kidneys to decrease urine production, resulting in more water being retained in the blood. Oxytocin results in contraction of the walls of blood vessels. Together, the physiological changes resulting from the secretion of vasopressin and oxytocin increase blood pressure. Stress-related hormones, the pituitary gland, adrenal corticotropic hormone, or ACTH, activates the autonomic nervous system. The vasopressin, right, it instructs the kidneys to retain water. Oxytocin contracts the walls of blood vessels. The adrenal gland, cortex, glucocorticoids, primarily cortisol, increases blood glucose for energy and prepares the body for fight or flight, right? These are primary. Aldosterone increases blood pressure by increasing sodium retention and decreasing urine production. Stress-related hormones, so the adrenal gland or the medulla, the epinephrine, adrenaline increases the heart rate, muscle tensions, and how hard the heart pumps blood. The noradrenaline increases heart rate and constricts blood vessels, thereby increasing blood pressure. Thyroid gland, the thyroxin, increases metabolic rate, breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, and provides energy. The autonomic nervous system, the system that works together during immediate stress. The two components are the sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for expending energy, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for conserving energy. All right, one for expending, one for conserving. Another opportunity to pause the video so we can examine figure 2.5, the nervous system, which consists of the brain, the spinal cord, and the peripheral nerves. The cardiovascular system transports blood between the body cells and organs. Stress causes the release of oxytocin and vasopressin. Both of these hormones constrict blood vessels, which leads to increased blood pressure. The heart responds to stress with increased force of contraction. Serum cholesterol and free fatty acids increase the risk of heart disease. Figure 2.7, the cardiovascular system. The gastrointestinal system is responsible for digestion. It reduces saliva production and increases hydrochloric acid production due to stress. It results in the development of ulcers. Stress alters, or peristalsis, the rhythmic movement of food. This can result in diarrhea, constipation, or irritable bowel syndrome, IBS. The muscles during stress results in bracing or tensing. Bracing is a term that means unnecessary muscle tension, and this could lead to the development of muscle pain and aches. Contraction of smooth muscles that control the contraction of internal organs. These are persistent stress in the cardiac muscle. This leads to the death of cardiac muscle cells and the loss of contractility of the heart. The skin's temperature and ability to conduct electrical currents are both affected by stress. Stress causes increased perspiration and vasoconstriction. Vasoconstriction changes the color of the skin. The galvanic skin response, or GSR, electrodermal response for the electrical conductance of the skin, is a major part of a lie detector. This was lecture number 2. Now, since this was so science heavy with science jargons, it's a great opportunity to go back and look at your notes. Again, those that study medical terminology, you will breeze right through this. many of us that are not familiar with these words, sometimes it takes practice looking at these definitions and going over to where we can learn that particular jargon, right? I am Professor R. Alexander, and I will see everybody next time. Keep up the good work.